Gary, what do you think about that weather today?
Oh, it's beautifully somber.
Somber? Somber, I
Somber.
feel warm.
Is that? I don't think that's
I don't know
warm.
I don't know what
Somber.
it
I
means.
think it's like sad.
Somber is like laid back. But I don't know why when you
No.
say somber, it sounds like
Summer.
maybe that's what it is. But I see orange.
Are you a warm weather guy or no? Not warm. Let's say hot weather guy or cold weather
Are
guy.
you trying to take me out?
No.
So, am I warm or wait, what did you say?
A warm weather guy or a hot weather guy or
Okay.
a cold weather guy.
Oh, definitely hot. Definitely warm
Yeah.
weather. Definitely hot weather.
Yeah.
Sweat. 98 degrees is better than
Yeah.
50 degrees.
I totally agree. And I meet a lot of people who I ask this question who say that they love cold weather, but I can't do it.
I think that's when people are sitting in the heat and they think they want cold. And just, having this gym here for 6 years and going through the cycle of weather, over and over again, at least for a fitness and health perspective, being in a gym warehouse, like it, for sure, I'd rather it be hot. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to complain about it,
Yeah.
on a regular basis. But, man, motivation.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's getting cold here. We have cold days, and somehow
like
we still have
70
like
today.
warm days.
Yeah.
But when it's cold out there, I don't want to work out. I'm like it's
Bars
too
are
cold.
cold.
For this.
If you can see your breath, that's just not good.
Yeah.
And again, if you're inside a gym that's climate controlled, which we have some space like that, but
And for me, it's like heat. I can handle heat. If I'm hot, I can
Right.
I can deal with it, mentally. But when you're cold, your body has physical responses
Right.
like shivering that
Sure.
are just so aggravating and annoying.
and it's something that we don't deal with on a regular basis. I mean, a majority of our time is spent in the heat. I mean, it makes sense. We're in Texas. Doesn't mean people don't say they like the cold, but I don't know if they've ever experienced Minnesota in January or something like that, and so they're kind of basing it on still their experience, right?
Yeah.
And it's not to say one's right or wrong, but this is definitely a good question to pose, I think.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna get that on the social media side and see what, and I'd like to see kind of what the opinion is of some Northerners in comparison.
I feel like they all love the cold, but they're also acclimated.
They
to it.
have to, though,
Yeah.
convince themselves
Yeah.
that they like that shit because – and then maybe that's the same thing for us. We've had to convince ourselves we like the heat because we're going to deal with it more. So I guess bring that into a question, which one's more formidable for better training? Is there an answer to that?
I mean, that's a good. That is
Try
a
to
good
take
question.
away what you like to do and input if there was a research done on this. Like, what would you imagine the results be?
Well, okay, so it's hot. Your body warms up when you work out. So
okay, counterpoint, dehydration.
dehydration.
So
Yeah,
you're
that's,
saying
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. So like in the heat, you have chance of overheating. And,
Right.
Even when you get to a point where you are pretty hot, your body temperature's through the roof.
Right.
You probably slow down a little bit. Whereas in the cold, you might not have that throttling point. But at the same time, we experience it here. We did it in the open for the first open workout
Right.
where weather became cold out of nowhere,
Right.
and we were
Cold
all
front came
like
in.
bleeding out of our lungs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, and I'm sure there's something on the web about a study like this, and it'd be curious to find it. But, I mean, I think there's obviously positive and negatives both ways. I don't know if there's a perfect condition, and if we were talking about the Olympian project, trying to find that out, I think that's another thing to dive into. And if somebody listening or watching has something maybe to back a little bit of that, because I think there's always a counterpoint. Like you said, you're warm when it's hot, and I like that personally. But can you control your body temperature more when it's cold because you can rev it up and let the atmosphere cool it back down? Whereas when you're hot, cooling down, you better go get some ice water and an ice tub.
Here's the thing
Is
too.
that harder, easier? I don't know.
Where are you, if you're an athlete, what are you competing in? Because I mean, in the CrossFit games, they're usually in pretty warm weather.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. That's
They
true.
moved to Wisconsin. I don't know what weather was like up there, but
I know the first year, I remember them talking a lot about that it was wet and cold.
wet and cold.
I mean, like 50s.
Yeah.
Whereas in California, you're not going to get probably wet.
We had the people overheating in Murph that one year.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess like if you're going to compete in California,
Well,
probably
yeah, it was definitely warmer for sure than Madison.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think this is one of those things where you got to train to be ready for anything. So maybe you should. The best answer here, maybe, if we were to conclude this topic, would be like just like train both hot and cold.
So basically, Texas is the best.
Oh well, we don't get. I mean, like today, it's it's supposed to be only in the 50s, but I would imagine it's muggy today. It's got to be up close to 70, but it's a muggy 70.
Yeah.
And it's not a nice 70. 70 sounds like the perfect weather. We don't get perfect weather here. We get really, really hot, and then I mean I know our temperature doesn't show it really cold, but it's so humid. But that, just a general like what's better, hot or cold to work out in. I think if we're talking about a lifestyle of being prepared, you gotta know both a little bit.
Yeah.
You gotta lift a little bit, you gotta run a little bit. So it's kind of the same concept, maybe. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
That's a good.
We got a lot of CrossFit talk today.
I think we definitely got some fitness in CrossFit too, and it's not the same CrossFit stuff you would probably imagine.
No.
We're talking about lawsuits. We're talking about a movement that is highly debatable.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning into the Olympian Project. Just a quick reminder that we are on iTunes, Spotify, and on YouTube in video format, as well as the Wednesday WOD. First episode just went up last week, so if you're interested, go check that out. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode.
All right, so as we were talking about before the break, we wanted to go over a movement today that is, like I said, kind of controversial. And not only CrossFit, but it can be for bodybuilding. It can be for those that just go to a gym. I think it's a very well-known movement. And that movement that we're going to talk about today is the bench press.
The bench press, yes. A wonderful movement. So the reason we're talking about this...
Wait, why is it wonderful for you?
Wonderful movement?
You said it's wonderful.
I mean, why is it not wonderful?
Well, I mean, I think it's a movement.
Yeah.
That would be like saying every movement's wonderful to me, because I'm very general.
So in CrossFit we have movements that aren't wonderful, like a devil press. That's not a fun movement.
That is actually terrible.
So,
but I still love it.
By wonderful, I mean it's fun to do.
Okay.
So the reason we're talking about this is because Games athlete Jacob Hepner actually posted a YouTube video talking about should CrossFitters bench press, and I have quite a few opinions on this, and he did too, and we just kind of want to talk about that. So me coming from, I have a powerlifting background. I powerlifted in high school, and I train powerlifting every week. It's a big part of my training.
Right. So you not only do CrossFit, but so Gary does quite a bit of. I mean, you have a program that you follow.
Yeah.
And that's. Would you say, what's your main source of program? Like, what's your main source of fitness right now? Or is there a hybrid?
I mean, it's pretty balanced right now, but.
Okay.
Like anything, training cycles are important. So there are some times where I focus on my strength and powerlifting more, and there's some times where I'm focusing on my conditioning and CrossFit more.
Right.
So they're both pretty balanced. I'm not in the powerlifting boat, and I'm not in the CrossFit boat. You know. Well, I guess I kind of am. CrossFit's,
Are you considering if you were to get ready to do because I think you want to compete probably on both levels. Meaning CrossFit and powerlifting. Like if you were getting ready for a powerlifting meet, you would probably change your day-to-day structure, right? So
it'd become very minimal CrossFit,
right?
Definitely some conditioning. Powerlifters do a little bit of conditioning.
If you were to flip that, and you were saying you were going to get ready for a CrossFit competition,
well, it depends on how far out it is. If we're talking 6 weeks out, then I'm going to be doing a lot of conditioning, and if it's 12 weeks out, I'll do a strength cycle, and then I'll do a conditioning cycle.
Sure. Okay.
Same way any professional athlete, would. But so we talk about the bench press, right? And it's in CrossFit, it's not done a lot. in the
Well,
sport.
It might depend on. Oh, right.
In
Yeah,
the
in the
sport,
sport. Yeah.
and then last time we saw it was like regionals with what's that workout called? Linda
Yes, it
Yeah.
had the bench press. It had the cleans
and the deadlift.
and
Yeah.
the deadlifts. And
Yeah.
it was a fun workout to
Yeah,
watch. Even,
yeah.
I thought.
So bench press, it's not something that
But yeah, as far as like the sport of CrossFit,
yeah.
that's what the only time that we've seen it.
Last time I've seen it. Other than that, I don't know.
There might have been a team series thing, which isn't a big event. Right?
Even at the games, they did a CrossFit total, and instead of doing bench press, they did an overhead press,
Right.
which so bench press in the sport of CrossFit,
CrossFit.
it's not a big thing, and
Not
I think
very big.
because of that, we don't translate it into the boxes that much into the day-to-day CrossFit fitness, but it does have its applications. And so watching the Hefner video, he does cater a bit more towards the athlete.
Like the pro athlete.
Yeah, he talks to athletes. He talks to people who want to be competitive. And basically his summary and his opinions on the movement were similar to mine. And I think yours as well, that, yeah, it's something you should do, but it's not something that you should over-exaggerate,
Right.
and do too much. But here's where I don't agree with him. He, in his video, talks about how he believes that it causes overdevelopment in the front upper body, so in your
like the
pecs and your delts.
Right.
And it causes, for him, he said, when he was benching in high school and in college a lot, that it translated to a faulty overhead position.
Right.
It's not something. And I talked to my dad about this, who is a powerlifting coach, and I got his opinion on this.
CrossFit Willis powerlifting coach Jonathan Wiley.
Yes, that is him, and I got his opinion on it, and he gave me his reason as to why it's not exactly the case. So according to him, bench press, it doesn't really cause lack of mobility because most people's problem isn't a lack of exterior shoulder rotation. So that's going from here to here.
Right.
But rather a lack of flexibility in the lats.
Right.
And lack of strength in the posterior part of the body. So, and I mean, if you think about it, if you have someone who doesn't work out,
Sure.
who doesn't bench press, doesn't do anything, and they don't have a decent overhead position, it's not because they bench press, because they don't.
Right.
It's because they're not developed in the right areas,
Yeah, I think, to piggyback that a little bit, first off, I think bench press has its place. I think presses. I like to refer kind of the whole grouping of the strict press, the overhead press, shoulder press, push press, bench press. You can do those with dumbbells, barbell. And I think that's the thing. Some people come out and argue generally bench press causes, what was his argument there?
lack of mobility.
Lack of mobility. What I've seen in the gym, we've been here for about 6 years, and what I've seen mostly is that if you don't do it right and you don't work on the whole body properly, I think you can overdevelop, but that's the same thing you could say about with deadlifts, back squats. Like, if you don't complement certain muscle groups, they won't move the body the right way, right? If you have an undeveloped hamstring and you're overdeveloped, quad muscles in the front, you're going to have issues picking up things the right way, right? Yeah. You're going to be very forward in your toes and off the heels. And now, are you putting more pressure on your knees? And how are your hips aligned at that point? I mean, those muscles are trying to pull on your body and your structure. So I do think what I've seen from people coming from like a Gold's Gym that have been uncoached or untrained and that kind of did the things that they've seen on, say, social media or online, and they did a lot of bench presses, and they didn't do a whole lot of stuff to counterbalance that, meaning like your rows and pulling those lats to be engaged, maybe even pull-ups, but pulling those shoulder blades back. What I've found is that people do have a lack of mobility because they didn't work on their mobility, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't the bench press's fault, but it could they just didn't supplement to pull those shoulders back.
Yeah.
So and he said something about he did it in high school, but what was that?
Who, Hefner?
Right.
Yeah, I know. He said he did a lot of bench in high school and college, and he believes it has caused him to not have as strong of an overhead position because he can't get all the way back.
Right.
He's more forward.
In powerlifting, though, when you think about powerlifting, right, the sport, you got bench press, deadlift, and back squat, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you only in your programming see typical bench press, typical back squat, and typical deadlift? Meaning those movements. Are you just doing those 3 movements over and over and over?
No, of course not.
You got supplement lifting.
They are
right?
the primary lifts, and it's what we focus on.
Right.
But our structure for our training is the conjugate method. So it's based off West Side Barbell. It's all Louis Simmons' ideas, and so we do a lot of what they do, and a big part of powerlifting and developing strength is bodybuilding. You know, I mean, you see it. You see bodybuilders lift, and they're extremely developed, but they're also pretty strong. You know, they're not as strong as powerlifters because they don't strength train, but they're doing something right. So we do bodybuilding. You know, we develop different muscle groups.
But you would say that you're going to supplement those lifts to make those lifts better, stronger, keep mobility so you can do them.
Exactly.
And, I say that just from experience watching these guys on a regular basis. They are, doing bent over rows. They're doing different style squats, even box squats, deadlifts. I think I've seen single leg. The thing is, like, you can't just go in there. And I think the whole argument here, the whole point is a lot of people just go in there and just bench press. And that's kind of their upper body movement. They don't think about, they might do some tricep pull downs or something like that. But a lot of people don't get into those lats. They don't get into the backside to really help maintain some yin and yang to that. Because, again, I mean, you could, and I've seen this before, guys that are pretty strong, and they focused on that front side a lot. But it's not because the bench press is going to ultimately do that to everybody. It's because of how you used it, I think. And that's my opinion. That's from just seeing my experience with different athletes. Because they can, you can overdevelop anything. So to say that bench press needs to be monitored is kind of an obvious statement. Everything you do needs to be tracked and monitored when it comes to fitness. So I don't think he's shedding light on anything new, but I don't think it's also maybe the right answer.
Well, here's the thing.
But that's his experience too.
And me and my dad talking to him, we kind of sit on the fence. We're not saying that you should never bench press ever, and it's not something you should do. And we're also not saying that you should bench press every day, 3 times a week. But if you look at what CrossFit is, it's constantly varied functional fitness.
Right.
What is more functional than pushing something?
Yeah, I think it definitely translates.
Yeah, and then you talk about being in a constantly varied model, upper body strength. That's just one more way you can vary it. And if you look, if it's something you're looking to supplement, think about, in your competitive athlete. Think about a CrossFit athlete, a high-level CrossFit athlete.
Right.
Think about how much they might be able to bench, and think about how much a high-level power lifter can bench. I guarantee you that power lifter will overhead press more than that CrossFitter.
Right.
And so it does have its place in building strength. In any pushing movement that we do in CrossFit, but also in that overhead position. It's not going to by itself make your overhead position stronger. You do have to do overhead movements.
Right.
But it is a great supplement. But again, it's not something you need to balance it out,
Yeah, I mean, we've always used it as a good upper body strength. But me personally, like just taking my, what I've experienced over the years. Like when I first started CrossFit, I probably bench pressed maybe 205. I was 100 and well, I was out of shape actually at the time. I was 200 pounds, but I had done nothing. And, 205 would have been a real tough challenge at the time. Probably couldn't even do that. And through CrossFit, not even benching very much, but doing a lot of different other presses and other movements. I've seen my bench press go as high as 285. Now, for somebody and we know a couple of these guys that came from Anytime and Gold's Gym and stuff like that, they had a little more emphasis. It wasn't part of the culture, and it's not a bash. That was one of their benchmarks. We got Fran, Murph, for sure a lot of the guys that we had come over knew their bench press, knew their back squat, deadlift, stuff like that. And, I'm not a 300-plus bench presser, but it never held me back from being a 300 split jerk guy or a push jerk or something like that. So I actually saw my bench press kind of go up through just getting better at CrossFit, and it was supplemented in there every once in a while. That's the only reason I knew that I could bench press some, at that amount of weight. So as far as a CrossFit standpoint, like we use it. We use it just like we would use anything else, though. I mean, in all reality, like the sexy movements in CrossFit, what would you say are the sexy movements in CrossFit? What's your
there's
opinion?
plenty to choose from. You got muscle ups if we're talking about gymnastics. You got
Let's
clean
talk about
and jerk
weightlifting.
if you're talking about weightlifting.
Right. Snatch.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think those are the ones that people really put a lot of emphasis on when they first get into CrossFit because it's cool, man. It's cool looking. It's something you've never done. And a lot of people can come in and make pretty big gains there because they start off so low based on form and technique. Well, if they put any time and effort in form and technique, those numbers can go up pretty quick. And to me, it's what I've noticed with those two movements, clean and jerk and snatch, it's just what I like to say, it's the sexy movement. Like, you want to get people better clean and jerk and snatch, but it's about the same amount of percentage. It's not much more percentage used than, say, a bench press even. Yes, you're going to use clean and jerks and snatches in a Metcon from here and there at a very light weight. But as far as getting a 1-rep max, that's 1 watt out of 5 at a competition, maybe. Or you got to tie it in with a Metcon. If you're talking about the Open, how many times have we maxed in the Open? 2 times, 3 times? It's not much more than that, and we're talking, over 10 Opens. So bench press is another piece of the puzzle, though. It shouldn't be left off the list, and it shouldn't be necessarily prioritized as a CrossFitter. Now, powerlifting, that's different, and bodybuilding is different.
One point is functionally. I think that's a big point because we're not just talking to the CrossFit athlete. We're talking about people who want to be healthy and live happily.
It's very functional, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a functional movement, pushing objects.
And to counterbalance that, being able to pull yourself up to a ledge or pull yourself up on a bunk bed or pull yourself up out of something would be just as important. And so there's your counter, your push and pull right there. So no, I would never suggest, hey, focus on a 12-week cycle of nothing but bench press or pushing, because what I will say this, I think that's where you can make a mistake and start to overdevelop on one side and cause some mobility issues. Dealing with a Rosti, our local Rosti guy, like, I don't even bench press that much, but there are a lot of stuff that load the front side, and I do have some pull forward. And it's been well known in CrossFit that it'll pull those shoulders forward. You've got to learn to engage the back side. So, but at the same time, I wouldn't say leave the chest alone, leave the front side alone, quit pressing and only be pulling. You could go and do the same thing on the other side. Yeah. So that's definitely my opinion on it. As far as the bench press goes too. And I don't think Hepner was saying much different.
No, but I think I just kind of for our listeners and who didn't see that video, and I just kind of wanted to make it more clear that bench press isn't bad, and that bench press isn't the holy grail either.
But getting in a car and driving to work can be bad. Right? Somebody can hit you. I think if you do it right and take care of what you're supposed to take care of, it'll be okay. that's probably not a great example because that means somebody else hit you. You can't do anything about that. But you can do something about your form and technique. So maybe driving with your eyes closed is like doing it without a trainer that's telling you how to do it right or wrong. So in all reality, man, no matter what, I think somebody that's starting their fitness journey should get with a personal trainer at your local gym or go to a CrossFit or a program that has instruction and leadership. Because if you've never gotten into this before, jumping into it and trying to follow something on a YouTube video is completely different. And that's no different for bench press.
Yeah.
It is not bad for you, but it can be bad for you, just like an air squat. It's not bad for you, but can be really bad for you if you do it wrong over and over and over again. So that would be my thought process on any movement. It's no different for me than any other thing in fitness. Is there a movement that you would just cross off the list? And I guess we got to also, though, because here's another thing. Like, there are movements that I have with certain age group individuals and certain injury individuals that I won't do. Does that make so? Let's talk about.
No, I agree.
Like, let's talk about, you're 18 to 35, really no injury history. And I guess the question is, if somebody comes in with a blank slate, no injury history, is there a movement that you're going, no way, this is only going to cause problems?
Yes. There's a few, actually, and I'm glad you brought this up because this is something me and my dad talk about a lot. It's an opinion we have about CrossFit in general and the culture. Right. Any movement where you are not strong enough to do it, but you're trying to technique your way through it. So we're talking about muscle-ups. Right. We're even talking about snatch and having the mobility for a snatch.
But you're not saying you wouldn't do snatch.
No,
you're talking more of a philosophy of how to train.
So, but other than that, I don't think there's any movements in CrossFit that you should just.
That's a good point, avoid. But that's a whole different subject too.
Yes,
right? How to approach it, but generally movement. Would you curl? Would you not curl? Would you do sumo movements? Would you run on this? Is there anything that you could say is like for sure? No, I would not apply that.
No, I mean, I think everything has its benefit.
Right.
Even in biceps, which a lot of people will say are not that important or just for looks.
They tie in.
Yeah,
it's a muscle. There's a function. There's a purpose for it.
So no.
And here's something too. Like, I mean, looking at yoga, like I was gonna say, well, I wouldn't have somebody try to bend backwards and touch their feet, break them in half. But I watched a documentary on Netflix about the Bikram yoga. Of course, he was at least based on this documentary on Netflix, he was a kind of a madman. He started it. He was a compulsive liar, manipulator. But he started this Bikram hot yoga that still today people refer to. And the things that I saw them able to do in yoga poses, I mean, he literally would stand on people that had their heads on their ground behind them. Mm-hmm. And I guess and my point was going to be this, if the body can move that way, then there's a reason to develop it. Mm-hmm. And somebody be like, well, you can put your hand behind your back, and some people can and some people can't. But if the body can go there, I think there's a purpose for it. And watching that and look at some of the Bikram yoga poses, I wish I had pulled it up. I know my body can't go there right now, but there's not to say there's not a benefit to working on it.
I think that's more than there's movements you want to neglect. I think there's movements that people don't do enough that should be more emphasized. And I think the first thing I think of is the glute hamstring lower back area, that posterior chain. That's probably something people neglect a little bit too much, especially
and not
in CrossFit.
Knowingly neglect.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It's very hard to understand how to actually engage that.
Yeah.
And as a CrossFit coach, I've seen that the cues and the technique, like it is very tough and challenging to get people to utilize the actual the glute and the hamstrings for sure.
So. Yeah, I think that wraps up that segment nicely.
Yeah. So we're going to take a little break, and when we get back in, we're going to talk about some crazy stuff that went over last week through the CrossFit world, and not just the CrossFit world, but the health and fitness industry overall. So when we come back, you'll hear from the Olympian Project on that. All right, so what we wanted to talk about today, and was what in the news last week. Popped up. I know it popped up in our Twitter feed.
Well, a few days ago is when I saw it. December 4th is when.
December 4th. So 5 days ago, something that was pretty big, at least in our world, not just because in CrossFit, but some of y'all might know, and maybe some of y'all don't, but CrossFit, the sport, has changed quite a bit. And a lot of that was because Greg Glassman really wanted to turn his priority, one, being a health and fitness program, not a sport. I think that's pretty obvious with the changes. But the other thing was he's in a lawsuit battle, I think, with like big soda companies. I also read where he's in a current lawsuit with the HHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services, which is another big thing we're going to talk about. But the one that just finalized was the CrossFit battle with the National Strength and Conditioning Association, or known as the NSCA. He was awarded CrossFit was awarded $4 million in legal fees.
Yeah, and this is something I hadn't heard of. It's hard to follow this man and his lawsuits. He loves suing people.
Well, yeah.
But it's for a good cause. At the end of the day, he wants to better the lives of. He wants misinformation to stop being spread. He wants companies to stop taking advantage of society, really, and
Right. Well, and I think this isn't just him wanting to sue people. I mean, this group, the NSCA, which is nationally known, National Strength and Conditioning Association. A lot of people go there to, that want to get in the world of health and fitness, and this is where they start. A lot of certifications come out of there, a lot of information on how you should follow, your dietary and what movements help this and that. Like, they're a big group of people, and they came out and said they had a study that I remember you read something about it. It was like 16% of people that did CrossFit came out with an injury or something like that.
I don't remember the exact percentage, but basically they were slandering CrossFit with a study that, at the end of the day, well, it exists, but at the end of the day, as far as scientific study goes, it wasn't the most controlled. There was just so many variables, and it's obvious just, reading about the study that they were really just trying to attack CrossFit.
Right.
Why? I don't really know, but the point is, he started suing them because of the slander. And
why? I mean, the NSCA goes and certifies. They certify trainers that go, say, to Gold's Gym or some of these big gyms. And they're kind of the backing of, like, what qualifies you as an actual trainer, like the hours that are put into it, the continuing education credits. Like, they're kind of the standard there, or have been. And, CrossFit doesn't require you to go through them at all.
What does CrossFit go through?
CrossFit goes through CrossFit. They have their own certification. Oh, really? They said this is our thing. This is our fitness and health training.
There's no higher government body that controls.
No. You go to CrossFit, they control all their information. Now, they have been being recognized by other entities in the health and fitness. Okay, and I'll have to look it up exactly. And they are bringing other people in as well, especially on like the nutrition side. There's different groups that have their certifications put together, and now CrossFit's recognizing them and vice versa. So it's a growing thing. But at first, CrossFit was CrossFit certification. And that raised a lot of, well, they're just making up their own stuff. And, you just got to you follow their program, and now you're good to go. So the NSCA, I think what you're seeing was they were trying to slander a competitor.
Yeah, to say that, CrossFit, it's bad for you. That's essentially what they're saying. It causes injury, and that's it's such a
Well,
bold claim. Like, I mean, if you think of any aspect of health and fitness or sports,
right.
you can get injured doing anything.
Anything, right.
You know, I mean, you got injured your hamstring playing
soccer,
soccer
and had
in
never
a community
injured
soccer
my
league.
hamstring
You know,
in CrossFit ever.
and you know, to go out and say CrossFit specifically causes injuries through physical exercise is, I mean,
Yeah, and here's the thing. I'm a CrossFit guy, but man, I don't think, like, the one thing that I would have an issue with is, like, if you don't know what you're doing, it's like, seek help. Like, employ another trainer that's qualified to do so.
yeah.
This muddies the water a little bit because one of the big groups is the NSCA, and they've obviously put out incorrect information.
Yeah.
So now, does that turn the tide on what they're selling? Because, they've come out and said things aren't good and things are good. Well, really, what is true? What studies are real and what studies are fake? So I don't know. That might damage their reputation a little bit in that regard, and how much business they have and what they're going to get. But, I just think whether you're a CrossFit person or not, you gotta kind of open up to the concept of, like, you're going to come in and do what you can do, and if you're looking to get better, you're going to have to push yourself in any sense, whether you go with a trainer or not. And this was always an argument for me. Like, they had and I don't know if it was NSCA or not, but rhabdomyolysis was a big thing about CrossFit early on. Which, do you know what that is?
Yeah, I have an idea, but I
So,
don't know anything.
Not a lot of people do, but they made this a huge argument. Not NSCA. It was a bunch of people that came out, and I heard it through people walking in these doors. Like, am I going to get rhabdo? Like, do you know what rhabdo is? And basically, the breakdown of muscle fibers goes through the blood. It has to be cleared through. I mean, a lot of that soreness and why you should drink water when you're sore is to help flush the body. This is very general, not very scientific explanation, but you can break down too many of those muscle fibers, and then it's going to keep the kidney from actually filtering out what it's supposed to do, and then you have kidney failure, and that can cause or lead to death. And at the same time, somebody that catches rhabdo early on, go to the doctor, they're going to put you on fluids, and you shouldn't have any issues coming out of it. Now, that's general. I'm absolutely saying if you have any symptoms of rhabdo, which are going to be your urine is very dark like Coke, like a soda or something like that, 100%. You have extreme soreness and extreme swelling in, like, one area, like lower abdomen's a place that you can contract it, I guess, if you will, or it will happen because of smaller muscle fibers, and a lot of them break down. Bicep is another place. And some of the reason for those two areas is people overdo it in one session there and break down too much muscle fiber. Anyway, people's bicep on one side would, like, grow 25-30% in swelling like overnight. Those are, like, symptoms of rhabdo. So I would 100% support, say, go to the ER. Usually they can get you on, some sort of fluids, and you'd be okay. And I've also heard of cases where they pushed it off. They pushed off the symptoms, and some people barely came out with their lives. So it can be serious if you ignore it, like anything else that's not good for you. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that was a big thing about CrossFit. And we know that data, when people run, like, marathons, that's like a common theme of these athletes that have to run that long a distance in that amount of time nonstop, breaking down muscle. And then they get to the end, and these guys can barely walk. And a lot of them have a semi-case of rhabdomyolysis, and they have to be treated almost immediately, and that's where they have all the health concerns there. But you could argue the fact that they probably have more cases of that yet, but CrossFit was the golden child for rhabdo or something like that. So,
I mean, CrossFit, it's targeted a lot by, outsiders and people in different aspects of health and fitness, and it's also accepted by a lot. But you have a lot of people who try and discredit CrossFit, and to have a national organization come out and say CrossFit is a big cause of injury and
Right.
shouldn't do CrossFit. I mean, that's not.
Well, it's going to come back and get him, right? Because now you're looking at, Greg Glassman won it for CrossFit. They've been awarded $4 million, which I don't know if that's a lot or not a lot for that company, but it's not a drop in the bucket. It's going to hurt them. $4 million is going to hurt them to some degree. I don't know how much, if they're big business or not, and money, but I think that paves the way. And like I said, there's also another he has another lawsuit out right now against the Department of Health and Human Services. And apparently what I was reading, there was a lot of rumors of basically they're not disclosing information on donations. And so he's going after them as well. We'll see what happens with that. And of course, like I said, he's got other stuff out there. He's a pretty crazy dude as far as what his agenda is.
I mean, he's trying to change. He's trying to make a change.
I think big change.
Yeah, it's respectable. And I think it's gonna change things. He's definitely moving in the right direction.
So I wanted to take it off on a serious note because I mean, to be real, like that's interesting to us. Might have been a little boring to y'all that are watching, but I think it's important to know if we're talking about the Olympian, be the best version. This is impactful across the board. We fell across an article that we thought was pretty funny. And
why don't you pull this one up on the screen?
Yeah, let me pull this up on the screen here. As we talk about lawsuits and people winning lawsuits, and we thought this was pretty funny. And we're CrossFit folks, but we wanted to share this with y'all. This is off of Article 107 News, so we want to give all the credit to this website here, guys. You can go check it out. Rocky Balboa wins a $45 million lawsuit against CrossFit. Yeah. If anybody knows who's Rocky, do you know who Rocky Balboa is?
Of course I do. I mean, it's an amazing movie. It's directed by the same person who directed my favorite movie of all time. So of course I've seen it. It's a good movie.
So Rocky Balboa though, he's the fighter in Rocky.
Oh yeah.
Right? And so in this one, this was just released September 3rd, 2019, and we want to do a little more homework on this Article 107 News, whether, I don't know, to support it or not.
I mean, it's a parody news site, so
right.
It's not
real, but this was funny because I think it ties in a little bit. Rocky Balboa wins a $45 million lawsuit against CrossFit. It says under his picture here, Rocky makes a winning argument in spite of multiple brain injuries. So if you know it all, the movie, of course, I think they did some newer versions of it as well.
The Creed movies.
Yeah. And so, you know what Sylvester Stallone's kind of looking like nowadays. He looks like what Rocky would probably look like at this point. It says he had a decade-long struggle as a former professional boxer and mumbling enthusiast. Rocky Balboa was awarded $45 million from Greg Glassman. What was a couple of things that were funny in here? The judge, this was something they said the judge said. And of course, this is all fake, guys. This is all fake news. Judge Dorothy Horowitz of the First Judicial told reporters that while she expressed doubts that she wanted to hear the case, look, no one is less interested in whatever goes on inside of a CrossFit box than I am. So, it's playing in the fact that people get annoyed with CrossFit. And but his claim for that $45 million, let's see here. He quoted himself here, or Balboa quotes, "To me, life is the real workout. I look at a piece of meat and I'm like, yo, it's a punching bag. Or that pile of logs, that's just like the dumbbells that God provided, I thought this was pretty funny."
Well, we'll leave a link to this for sure if you want to read it yourself.
Yeah, let's post the link.
I love, finding stuff that makes fun of CrossFit because it's funny. It's all fun. I used to be, before I joined CrossFit, one of those people that made fun of CrossFit, called it stupid, and I think it's fun to see stuff like this, which this isn't necessarily just completely bashing on CrossFit. It's more of like a parody thing, but it is funny. It's interesting, and I do want to look at more articles from this website. Just if I'm ever bored.
Yeah, I think this is. I'm pretty pumped about it. I think it said something. I guess the argument was that Rocky Balboa actually started CrossFit and not Greg Glassman.
Yeah, it did. Oh, okay.
You see what I'm saying? He was doing around. Where was the statement? Let's see. To life.
To me, life is the real workout.
No, they were saying something about like jumping around doing stuff for no reason. When there's something about that, but here at the end, again, this is not a real story, but CrossFit makes a statement. Oh yeah.
It's a
picture of a CrossFit enthusiast hits stuff for no particular reason, just like Balboa did in 1985.
Yeah, someone swinging a hammer at a tire.
Right? And then it says, we at CrossFit, which is definitely not a cult, are deeply disappointed at the decision in Philadelphia today. We hope to put today's events behind us and return to our core goal, which remains, as always, to annoy the shit out of you on Facebook with discussion about how hard the WOD was today. So, again, a CrossFitter, I think it's kind of relevant because this came out not but a couple months ago, right before Greg Glassman actually won a case, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. So that is Article 107 news. So we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to finish up with some more sanctionals that we had no clue were going down. We've got to get better at this, so we'll be right back.
See ya. All right, guys, before we get back into the podcast, I just want to let you guys know that we do have a Patreon account for those of you who want to support the Olympian Project and what we are trying to accomplish here. Go to patreon.com/Olympian Project. There you'll be able to access bonus content such as monthly bonus episodes of the podcast, plus a few other perks like being able to listen to the podcast a day early and shout-outs in the podcast as well as Q&A priority. And if you want to support the podcast for free, and I'm going to stress that it's free, to go to iTunes and leave us a review, leave us a rating. It helps us out a lot. Thank you guys so much, and let's get back into the episode.
All right, so a transition in the CrossFit world. We talked about Greg Glassman, a couple of things that he's pursuing. How about the athletes and what they're trying to do, or what they were trying to do this last weekend? And if for you that are watching at home on the YouTube, we do have a video up, or not a video, but a schedule up that we're going to go over and talk about the events this weekend for the sanctionals. What do you think about that, Gary?
That's happening this weekend?
It already happened.
It already happened. So, and then we have Dubai actually starting on the 11th, which is.
Well, let's go. Let's talk about what happened this last weekend.
So we had the South Fit CrossFit Challenge, which took place in Argentina, and the Pandaland CrossFit Challenge, which took place in China.
Can you say that? Chengdu.
Chengdu,
China?
Chengdu.
Yeah, I don't think we're allowed to do that. But yeah, so Pandaland CrossFit Challenge, that was this weekend, along with the South Fit, like you said. Next one is Dubai, which that one I'm familiar with. These first three, I believe, are additions to the season of CrossFit. So it looks like. Now, we tried to find some information on Southfit CrossFit Challenge. We were fairly unsuccessful. Doesn't mean Instagram isn't up to date on that. But
what we found was in Spanish, and we couldn't read any of it.
And to be honest, Pandaland is out of China, and most of their website, again, I couldn't find the workouts for it. I'm going to do some more homework on the Instagram. But we did find a leaderboard for Pandaland, and that's what we're going to talk about to end today's podcast.
Yeah. So, we have Dubai starting.
Dubai.
Dubai. Starting in 3 days on December 11th. That was the one Matt Frazier won last year.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He opened the season in Dubai, and so that's why I was a little thrown off by that.
So, I know we do. I'll look at the leaderboard a little bit, and the men, there are a few men that I recognize, but not a lot of women. There aren't a whole lot of big names that went to either of these.
Well, it's a travel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Argentina and it's China, and some of the biggest names in our sport are either in the United States or in Europe, for the most part. So well, in Australia too. But none of these were taking place in any of those places, Argentina and China. Ireland, we did see some bigger names, right, with Filthy 150.
Yeah, there were.
Yeah.
I mean, Sarah won it. So.
Yeah. So let's see. You want to run down on that
Give me
leaderboard?
that rundown.
All right, that rundown. So Con Porter took first place with 458 points, and then a guy that we were talking about earlier, Mr. No Bench. No, I'm kidding. Jacob Hepner took 446 points, took second. Adam Davison third. Lucas Parker took fourth. Now, of course, second, third, fourth, fifth, all those numbers don't really matter, but for a payout, right? Number one is supposed to take the spot onto the games. Now, for the women's side, Harriet Roberts, and again, these are some names I'm not too familiar with. I think we're both going to do a little bit of homework on the intranet, but Alina Caratella Sanahuha. I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to have a video of me just trying to say names because that was terrible. Marnie Skies, maybe Marnie, but I'm going to go with Marnie Skies. Sykes, sorry. Olivia Kelly, Allison Scuds, and again, I doubt any of these women are listening to me right now, but I do apologize. And out of the top 9, I don't see a name that I'm too familiar with.
So let's go back up to the top. I just want to see if any of the women had already been qualified, just to see. And you said the first 20 qualify.
Well,
sure.
Are you on the CrossFit Games workout webpage? So keep going down. You'll see the blue line.
Okay.
Is the cutoff. So gotcha. I think it's 32 or 20.
Right here, it's 33 for the women.
Yeah, so the women was 33. Harriet Roberts, you see her name on there?
I do not at first glance. It looks like she's
earned
her spot.
Yep. So Harriet Roberts, somebody to look into. Looks like she did really well. First, and again, I don't have the workouts currently. I could not find that, or it was in Chinese, which I couldn't read. But she took second, first. So, and if you look at the screen behind us here now, for those that are just listening on the podcast, I'll describe it. They tell you how these folks got to this, and oddly enough, Pandaland doesn't have a qualifier, at least indicated on here. Southfit had a qualifier August 21st through September 9th, and that's how they got to go to that championship.
So Harriet Roberts, who took first place for the women, she was 59th overall this year.
World?
Yes, and I think by the looks of her profile, I think she is a regional athlete. She's been to the region. Actually, she's been to the games twice.
Harriet Roberts.
Yeah, she's been to regionals 7 times. So
does
she's
it say
actually
when her last appearance the games was?
Let's see.
It maybe last year.
Yeah. No,
okay.
she was. She actually took 13th.
Hey, look again. This isn't just for y'all to learn. We are learning as we go along, so it's a great perspective.
But her last appearance was in 2015. She took 27th place. But yeah, she's been around for a while. So 7 appearances
and
at
that's
regionals.
Out of China there, or out of the competition in China. Does it say where she's from?
It's from New Zealand.
New Zealand. Okay. Yeah. So I mean. That's who's taking the females. We said Con Porter. Do you mind pulling Con Porter up real quick while I go over some of this here? Events-wise for Con Porter, a little closer. Didn't kind of clean the floor like Harriet did. What was her name?
Harriet? I think it was Harriet.
Harriet, yeah. He took 6th on the first WOD, second, first, second, and second. So he had a 12-point difference. And, won it with quite a bit of room. And again, Jacob Hepner was there in second. So you can definitely see there's some Chinese representation there in the leaderboard of 28 athletes. But there are some bigger names on this side. So Con Porter,
And with that first place finish, looks like he took his spot to the games. He finished 58 in the Open, so that was a big win for him.
So he's now
I'm pretty sure Hepner was already qualified. Let me double check on that.
Okay. Con Porter definitely has showed some promise in the past, so that's cool to see him, and that's a name that people are going to be fairly familiar with.
And yeah, Hepner was 18th, so he already had a spot
Right.
in Con Porter. Even if he had took second, would have still got
Right.
his spot.
And that, like, again, if we're talking about the format of the games, and looking at this list here, Dubai's next. You know, let's say Jacob Hebner hadn't qualified at this point. Bam, here's his next opportunity. And he just earned himself a little paycheck there in China. That's another thing I love about the format, that these events are out there to showcase these athletes, and they're making money doing it. And the athletes get to continue being a professional athlete, you know, make money playing a sport. Soon after that, we've got the CrossFit Mayhem Classic the next month. So we do kind of die down a little bit.
Yeah.
It was heavy. It was hot and heavy in this first month and a half. November, you hit the Filthy 150, and boom, December, and we're going to hit also Dubai in December. So quite a bit of competition. Then it slows down just enough to catch your breath into the CrossFit Mayhem Classic, which is, I mean, that's Rich Froning's territory.
Yeah.
Like, who's going to come out, and how's that going to look?
That's going to be an
and
interesting
who's programming it and all that stuff.
I am going to be watching the Dubai, I think, as well as the Mayhem Classic. Other than that, there's not too many I have my eye on. Strength and depth in London, England, London. How would you say that?
What's that?
What is it? London? You say London, England, or England, London?
London, England?
London, England.
Yeah. Cape Town, Norwegian CrossFit champion. Then, of course, Wadapalooza. If you're in America, that's a lot of us are familiar with that and have typically some big names there. The Australian CrossFit Championship, I wouldn't be I'd be pretty interested in that one, too.
Oh, yeah, the Australian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are probably going to be a few big names there.
But
thinking,
as we get further into the season, too, though, like like Jacob Hebner, why do you go to China? I think it's an experience thing. I think he went and finished second. He basically got a free trip, I'm sure. Made a little bit of money, kept his name in the hat, kept his skill set fresh. But I think as you start to get closer and closer to the games, like some of the big names have to start backing down and focusing on the games, right?
Yeah. And as we get close, I mean, a bit farther down, we're going to have the Rogue Invitational, look kind of close. May 15th, that's, I mean, about a month out from the games.
Yeah, well, yeah, so they just released some stuff. I haven't dove into it. It's in August, yeah. So it used to be in July, but now they pushed it back. And, I mean, just a month outside of that, the Mayan CrossFit Classic in Mexico. And to be fair, like, even when regionals was around, we saw that the Latin America, South America, all that stuff wasn't as wasn't as popular, but it's growing. Mm-hmm. So I kind of see that Mayan CrossFit Classic probably being something for some of the locals to really take advantage of.
Yeah.
By then, you know the people that are in the games at that point. Mm-hmm. And something we'll start talking about, too, further down the road is who's going to be getting the random selected the wild card spots.
See, that's a good question as of whether or not it's going to happen or not, because there were a lot of people who were unhappy about Hunter McIntyre.
Controversy is good for show business, though, and so he fell off pretty quick.
I mean, nobody really even talks about him anymore. He placed not even in the top 100 in the worldwide. So
it's interesting. I think it'll at least be something good for us to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's some CrossFit talk specific. I know there was a lot, kind of a CrossFit vibe today in the podcast, which is okay by me. Mm-hmm. For those that aren't as into CrossFit, we wanted to show a little bit of perspective of, the bench press and not only in a CrossFit mindset, but across all different fitness avenues. And so hopefully you got something out of the day. And like I said before, consult somebody if you don't know for sure, especially if you're doing something new in your health and fitness. So that's going to wrap it up for the Olympian project. What you got left today, Gary?
Just real quick, be on the lookout for our bonus episode. We're going to have a double podcast week. We'll have 2 podcasts coming out this week, so be on the lookout for that. It's going to be a free bonus episode.
Free bonus.
We're going to have our friend of the podcast, Nick Surak, on. We're going to be trying some chicken sandwiches.
I think we also might have Taylor Page
as
coming
well as
in.
Taylor
You've
Page.
seen Taylor and Nick in the workout videos.
Yes.
They're going to be trying their hand. I don't want to give it all away, but they're going to be on the podcast, the bonus podcast episode this week. So look out for that, guys. It's going to be awesome.
All right.
Take it easy.